I'm working at CEPS as a research fellow at the Jobs and Skills Unit. CEPS is a think tank, but doing a lot of research, policy-oriented. We are doing various things, not only on labor markets. We have different units on foreign policy, regulatory policies, and energy, and various other issues that are of interest to our societies. As CEPS, we had role in several work packages during the STYLE project, but the ones that I was closely involved is the work package 6, which is on the re-emerging migration patterns in Europe, especially after the crisis. I used aggregate data across countries on migrants, as well as individual level data, where I've looked at some specific labor market performance of different types of migrants with a focus on youth. But we also have done some work on the policy analysis and looking back at the history, how migration patterns evolved over time and what were the policies back in the 60s and how they developed up to today. On the aggregate data analysis that we conducted, what we find is that that's basically starts from 1980s up to 2010, so it's a long period. We see some changes in the patterns of migration, and the composition of migrants, not just by origin but also by skills. Our focus on this work package was mainly, at least on this task, was mainly on Southern and Eastern European migrants, because those were the group of individuals who were the most mobile, especially in the aftermath of the crisis. So we wanted to have an idea of where these people were going, what kind of destinations they were choosing, but also what were the numbers, absolute numbers, because we have a lot of perceptions and things that we read on the media on numbers, but actually we wanted to check whether that has actually started earlier. That's why we had this historical perspective. And we saw that there has been this trend already going on since 1980s, even before, with the guest worker programs. And what happened recently is just an acceleration of it in the case of Eastern Europeans, but not so for Southern Europeans. So Southern Europeans were actually emigrating less compared to earlier periods, if you compare the numbers with guest worker programs of 60s. Whereas in the case of Eastern Europeans, we realized that there has been a jump in their emigration rates after the fall of the Iron Curtain, which was then accelerated by the EU accession of those countries, and then a little bit more after the crisis. So what we find in the microeconometric analysis that we conducted, we find that young migrants from Southern Europe were more likely to be in temporary contracts compared to natives in the destination countries. They had Eastern European migrants, for instance, had longer working hours than the natives, and both of these groups were more likely to be not well matched in the occupations that they hold, given their education. So, and all these conclusions were done after taking into account all their socioeconomic characteristics. So it was not just unconditional comparisons, but more like taking into account what they have as assets themselves. I would say there are at least two areas where policy can hopefully help. So on the integration of migrants in the host country labor markets. So I think any differential treatment towards those migrants should be minimized in order to make sure that we can use their skills and human capital, and that doesn't go waste. So in that sense, any measure that can utilize and integrate those people in the host country labor markets will be welcome, given all this literature that suggests that actually labor migrants bring more than what they take, despite the perceptions. So the actual numbers suggest that. On the other side, more specific policy implications, that's also based on what we find in our research on the mismatch problem, mismatch of skills in the occupations of migrants they hold, given what they achieved as educational attainment. So what could be a nice policy recommendation on this issue would be perhaps to ease this transferability of skills of those people, and assess them in a transparent and perhaps standardized way so that we can assess and utilize those skills. So it actually feeds back to the first issue of integration. Any policy that can integrate those people. But that starts again with this transferability issues of skills and screening, better screening of those people's skills and recognition of diplomas and education obtained abroad are, I think, one of the key issues that can help those people contribute to the host countries.